serious? People who have accidentally caused the death of another person. What happened? When I was younger playing Xbox whilst at my grandparents' house, I had left the room to go to the bathroom, leaving my wired controller on the floor. I suddenly hear a thud and decided to finish my business before seeing where it had came from. Whilst cleaning up, I heard a scream from my grandma and was told to stay in the bathroom. And so I did. Found out that my grandfather had accidentally stood on my controller and fell over the wire, cracking his skull open on the table, and was announced dead at the scene when the ambulance arrived. I am now extra cautious with where I leave items, encouraging my younger brother and sister to clear up their mess once they're done. When I was 18, I was working the night shift in a nursing home as an aide. Part of my job was to turn the paralyzed patients every 2 hours to make sure they didn't get bed sores etc. This one particular resident had late-stage Parkinson's diseases and her muscles and joints were stiff and brittle and she was catatonic. As I was flipping her from one side to another, I applied light pressure to her leg to move her back a bit and this snapped her femur. Given her age and health, the doctors decided that surgery was dangerous and she would have to heal on its own, if at all. Because of this, we could no longer flip her, which resulted in bed sores. She eventually went septic from those bed sores and died of septic shock. I always felt so bad about that. When I was 4 years old, my mother was roughly 3-4 months pregnant. One day I was supposedly crying and throwing a tantrum over a toy or something. My mother tried to comfort me by cradling me in her arms and take me to my room, which was up the stairs, but I cried and kicked so much that she lost her balance and fell down the stairs. I was unhurt and mother recovered without any lasting injuries. But my sibling died. Do you remember this, or did your parents tell you? I actually learned this from my grandmother when I was 13. When I was 4 and visiting Japan, I opened back door of a car in Japan to the sidewalk, but a motorcyclist driving in that space between the curb and road slammed into it. Blood everywhere. I don't remember the exact aftermath since I was so young, but everybody was screaming and I just sat there not understanding exactly what was happening until my mom ran off the scene and into the building in tears. Thanks for the kind words, everyone. I don't blame it on anyone, even myself, as it was just a really unfortunate circumstance. As for the thing regarding my parents as discussed below, don't worry about that either. They are out of my life. But honestly, while I do believe my parents did some really crap to me, I don't want to be angry at them. I'm here now and by myself, and I think the best course of action is just to put them and this ugly event out of my head. Unless it's to tell you curious folks. Thanks for the kind words and reassurance. Was skiing with a friend when I was still living in Colorado. We were going a good speed and enjoying the mountain. When we came back onto the main trail, he was still going really fast. I yelled at him to slow down and an elderly lady ended up merging at the same time as he looked back at me. My buddy is a good sized guy and ended up colliding with this old woman. The ski patrol ended up grabbing her from the mountain and she was clearly in a lot of pain. She ended up dying from her injuries a few days later. After their investigation, my buddy and the woman were both in the wrong. He had to pay some fines but never got any sort of lawsuit. How did your buddy feel about it? Like it? He has a family and kids just like she did. He wrote a note to her family apologizing, but they never responded. He wasn't drunk and he is kind of goofy guy. It could have been avoided. He could have been going slower, but she did not look up for anyone coming her way. I've seen people on the mountain collide before. It looked like any of the other times. 7 a.m. on a Sunday morning. I'm heading to work in a small town at the age of 15 or 16. Come over a crest on a hill and have no time to react. T-bone someone making an illegal U-turn in a driveway. All I remember is veering off to the right and damaging someone's stone wall after the hit. Crawling out of the wreckage out of breath and stumbling to see if the other person was okay. Their vehicle spun multiple times and landed in a ditch facing away, but driver side visible from where I originally was. Driver wasn't there. Move along the vehicle and check the other side. Driver is hanging out of the passenger side window with a steady stream of blood from their skull. Bottom line for me is that I ask and implore everyone. Please use your seatbelt. And don't make illegal U-turns like a dumbass. That would have solved the issue. It was a very small town and the driver was old. Still no excuse. Things can happen. Deployed in Afghanistan. Urban area. I got into programming to kill the time. Had an Arduino set complete with everything I would need to make tons of little gadgets. Got pretty good at it too, going to school for it when I get out. When it came time to go home, I didn't have room to take the kit with me. So I threw it out. Keep in mind, locals work on this base. And in my time there, at least 3 had been kicked out for ties with the Taliban. Within an hour of tossing the kit, it had been taken. Didn't think anything of it. Probably some other soldier thought it was cool and took it. Big base. Anything could happen. About 3 weeks after we left, an IED went off outside the gate. No NATO casualties. But about 20 civilians died in the blast. EOD reported that it was a strangely sophisticated bomb. They used my kit. My negligence gave them the means to kill 20 innocent people. I've never told anyone in the world about this. And it haunts me to this day. War survivor from Chechnya 94-96 war. I told a girl, maybe 17-year-old, to run out from the apartment building because I was so sure it was going to collapse. It didn't collapse. And she ran out into a hail of gunfire and died. I was so scared that I stayed in the building and it just never collapsed the entire time. So I left out the back. I often think about that. It was such a quick decision. She was right near the door. I was on my way out because the building felt like it was shaking. And I saw her and said, run out. The roof is gonna fall, and she ran out in a hurry and got blown apart by gunfire. Shrieking in pain until she was hit again and presumably died. I wish I didn't tell her that, obviously. It still sort of haunts me to this day. Especially her screaming. But I also know that I made the decision in goodwill. Trying to save her life. And to be fair, the building really felt like it was going to collapse. And everyone was running out. Not just me. Anybody would have told her to run as well. Nobody knew they were opening fire on the building. I know it sounds like lame justifications, but it is all I can think of to help ease my mind. Anybody would have done the same. I hope, at least. I was working in a nursing home as a volunteer. He was a painter. He told me to bring him oil paints, canvas and thinner, and he would paint something for me. The next week when I had to return, I was excited to see what he'd painted. But he was no longer there. The nurses told me that they came to pick him up. I think he drank the thinner at night. 2 years ago, my sister was working at a dealership. Her husband and I were spending the day together until it was time to pick up sis from work. He had been drinking tall boys all day. So when it came time to get his gal, I took the keys and said, I'm driving. He was mad enough that he refused to go with me. When I came back with my sister, he was nowhere to be found. But it was common for him to go on walks to calm himself down, so we didn't think much of it. 8 AM the next morning. State police were banging on the door. They told us he was struck and killed by a train while he was sleeping on the tracks. I was dating this girl that was a little dysfunctional due to being sexually abused by her grandpa, and nobody knew about it. I noticed some red flags and got her to open up and tell me about it. After we broke up, I told her mom she should stop inviting grandpa over to Thanksgiving dinners due to the sexual abuse. The mom called me a liar. But after asking the other daughter's cousins about it, they confirmed it was true and that they had all been molested too. After word got back to grandma, she said, I'll take care of it. Fast forward a week and grandpa is dead. Apparently grandpa had a lot of serious medications he was taking and grandma messed with the dosage, which killed him. His death was ruled natural cause and nothing ever happened to grandma. I was skiing with my friends on a school trip. As we went to sit on the chairlift, our skis locked. The way that happened meant that one of my friends ended up sitting on top of the other. The lift operator didn't stop the lift and we couldn't get off by the time we realized what was happening. It was my job to pull the ski bar down, but I couldn't due to the positing of people in the lift. Long story short, my friend ended up slipping and I was holding on to her as she dangled off the lift. I was wearing thick skiing gloves, so my grip on her was loose. She was screaming so much, but she stopped for a second, looked me in the eye and said, "Please don't let go." And then my grip gave in and she fell about 4 stories into some rocks near a river. We were shouting at the lift operator, but he was too slow to react. The girl died from internal bleeding and shock, as her legs twisted in a ducked up way when she landed. She went into cardiac arrest and died. I was questioned profusely by the police and was treated as a suspect. I was bullied endlessly, both online and IRL. In the end I blamed myself, and I still do to this day. This really is the nutshell version, but out of respect to people involved, I won't give any details, since it was only 4-5 years ago. Edit. Thanks for the supportive comments. I really appreciate them all. Sounds like that's 100% the lift operator's fault. Yeah, it's just that I felt at fault, and people drilled into my mind that it was me. Heck, even the local paper at the place said that the accident happened as a result of poor conduct on our behalf. When you see that in a newspaper, it really ducks you up. Turned left into my sister's driveway at 3 AM. A guy on a Harley was doing 60 miles per hour in a 30. With no headlight. My half-ton pickup left 4 feet of skid marks from being pushed back by the force. I still remember seeing him do mid-air somersaults. This was 1976. I was a manager at a theater, and it was the responsibility of the manager to make sure every last person left before you go right. Caitlin didn't have a car but was the best, nicest, kindest, hard-working 18-year-old I had met in a while. I didn't mind taking her home down this curvy backwoods road every night. Caitlin would sing me gospel while I drove, and she had an amazing voice. She sang at church choir. Well, one night I was exhausted. I had worked 2 long shifts back to back. I wasn't sure I should be driving, much less taking someone else home. So I asked another employee. Not their job, they reminded me. I know, and I pressed anyways. Caitlin asked if it was okay. I said sure, everything is fine. And I watched as I put her in. Called her mom so they knew a different car was coming, and went home. Next day at work I was pulled aside as soon as I got there and was told they had an accident. The girl, Tiffany, that I asked never drove on dirt roads and said she took the curve too fast. She was injured for life and will never walk straight again. Beautiful Caitlin died. Her mother came in that night and saw me. Walked right up to me and stated, smacking me in the face, screaming I had killed her daughter by making the decision for her. I watched her collapse in anguish, squeezing my arms, and I just let her. In front about 3K people. I felt tears rolling down my hot face. Regardless of what people say, I still after 12 years blame myself. I think of her often, and I suppose I might forever. Edit. Thank you so much for all the kind words. When my thoughts wander, I will look back on them. Thank you again.